Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Joel Rush. He's covered the Denver Nuggets in the NBA since 2005, and he's based all the way in Japan covering these teams. He occasionally covers Asian basketball. You can find him on Twitter at Joel Rush NBA. And he's a Denver Nuggets writer for Forbes and writes some great pieces there. But first things first, how you doing today, Joel?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing great as well. Excited to hop into the Nuggets and, some of your work and kind of your process watching film and writing stories. But first, backing up a little bit, I was wondering about your background and your path, your journey. How did you end up becoming someone who covers the Denver Nuggets in the NBA in Japan?
Well, my coming to Japan happened first. And, as the internet, I came to Japan in 1996. So, the internet was kind of in its nascency still then. But as that improved over time, that enabled me to start tracking the Nuggets a little more closely. And then I was very active on a message board, and I was writing these very lengthy posts, and that just kind of phased into blogging. And then I got picked up by his name was Jeremy Wagner. He ran a website called Pickaxe and Roll, which now actually is the name of a different Nuggets podcast. And I know that Ryan Blackburn, who runs that, he actually requested permission from Jeremy to use the same name. But I think you will not find many traces of that online anymore. After that, I wrote for Roundball Mining Company, and that was another Nuggets blog. And then for 1 year, I wrote for BSN, which became DNVR, which is, now one of the, more premier Nuggets or Denver sports-centric sports sites out there. And then I just got picked up by Forbes after that, and I've been writing for them ever since.
Very cool. So, what is your process like when you're writing stories? You say you just kind of found yourself writing long blogs, long stories about the team, about the league. What is your process like as a writer when you're trying to come up with the story? Are you looking for any certain thing, or is it more reactionary? Like you see something, a trend building, and you're like, that deserves to have its story told, or that's something cool that I just kind of want to think about and write about.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not probably so reflective on my process, but I think usually any article that I write kind of starts with a kernel of either like a statistical thing that's happening that I want to dig deeper into, or sometimes maybe I don't really get on the hot take wagon very much, but I sometimes do have a little ranty kind of thing. My latest piece is about Michael Porter Jr.'s improved playmaking, and that just began from basically noticing that his assists were up this season, and by up I mean he's at about 3 assists per game. So we're not talking that he's like moving mountains here, but relative to his own previous seasons, it is an improvement. And beyond that, there's just visible stuff he's doing out there, like playing much less selfishly than he did in the past and things like that. So, in a way that was almost kind of subtweeting the Michael Porter Jr. is selfish or Michael Porter Jr. is a ball hog type, stuff, which there's a lot of that out there. And, some of that was based on fact, especially early in his season. He could be a bit of a chucker. But so like I usually do try to bring some perspective into, even if I'm basing it on some stat or something like that, I probably try to insert some, color into the commentary there. And in this case, it was a film study. So I do enjoy doing the video work on things. And, I kind of compiled 4 different videos for that piece. I grouped by, unselfish plays or assists in transition or things like that. There it is.
Yeah, pulled up your data viz right here from the article, scrolling through. And, it is a clear improvement. You can see it, just off assists per game. And like you said, I saw kind of a funny meme that takes, just a little funny jab because that's what Twitter's all about. Where it was like somebody saw Porter had 3 assists, and the caption was like, "Okay, Chris Paul, we see you over there." Like he's racking up all these assists, but when he only averages about one a game, and he's all the way up to 3 per game. That's the 3 times increase. When the assist to turnover is almost 3 times as much as well. I mean, you make clear all the trends of his assist numbers are going up. And I wonder if, part of that might be building habits with Jokic, becoming more comfortable over the years, just keeping the ball moving, being in that system, kind of seeing the way Jokic reads the game, and then realizing that, like, if you give up the ball, you're still probably going to get it back if you stay ready to shoot, and the team all trusts each other. That, just because you give up the ball one play doesn't mean you're not going to get to shoot at that same play, or even later in the game. So that's definitely an interesting development, and they need it. I mean, there's been a lot of changes in Denver. They've lost their kind of their key role player in KCP to the Orlando Magic. So shout out to the Magic, but the that's a big swing where he might not be the best player, he might not be a star, but he just fit that 5-man starting unit so perfectly in what he brought. So it seems like they're missing him, and then just to jump right in, like what's going on with Jamal Murray? Like that seems to be a big change from him. He's never been a guy that created a ton of space, but he created just enough of a window where he could make the shot, and his tough shot making skills, bar none. Even if he wasn't voted an all-star in the West those years, like he was clearly a star guard that made him and Jokic a star duo. Those epic series, with Donovan Mitchell in the bubble, just an all-time back and forth shootout, and obviously the championship run, he was a huge part of that. So, do you have any inkling of what's going on with Jamal?
It's it's the question everybody wants to find the answer to, and I think there's a lot of theories out there, and I think probably first and foremost among them is basically that it comes down to nagging injuries and conditioning. Um, I mean, I believe Jamal is, how old is he now? I think 27, perhaps. Um, but it would be very strange if he just became a worse player suddenly at this, you know, right when he should be at the peak of his career.
Right. And
So
do you think it's something to do with, like, just a cold streak that won't end? Like, because he is just a tough shot maker who was on such a hot streak for years that we kind of expected that to be the norm. Could this just be, even going back to the summer, I think he had similar struggles, playing overseas in FIBA or the Olympics with Canada. So,
yeah, I
is
mean,
this just,
frankly, he was pretty just terrible with Team Canada.
yeah,
There's no two ways about it, and it was, yeah, worrisome to see that, and also just the fact that he did play with Team Canada after having some struggles in the playoffs was a little worrisome. And I think the Nuggets going to I think Abu Dhabi, um, that international travel probably didn't help anybody in terms of fatigue and stuff like that. But yeah, I think what I would say, what I don't think is happening is that he just suddenly became a worse player. And I think we should expect to see a return to the mean, which is better than he's been playing this season. But that is contingent on his conditioning and his health. And he has been averaging 36 minutes a game in the 17 games that he's played this season, which is way too much. Like, they got to cut that down, but they just are pretty thin in the bench now. I think Christian Brown has been. You were talking about KCP. Christian Brown has been very impressive so far this season in stepping up into that starting shooting guard role, and he's been great. Per expectations, he's probably exceeded expectations. I posted today on Blue Sky. Actually, you mentioned my Twitter account before. I'm gradually trying to shift my activity more and more over to Blue Sky, where I'm at the same handle. But that he is shooting, I think, 436 on threes, this season, but he's making a few fewer attempts. I think KCP was at like 4 attempts per game, and he's at 2.6. So, he could be a little more prolific from 3 range, but he's done a very good job of stepping up into that KCP slot. But the bigger problem with that is that vacated, you don't have both of them. That vacated a spot on the bench where now, the bench is even shakier than the bench has always been bad in the Jokic era. But now they're really reliant on these young guys and very reliant on Russell Westbrook. And he's been, Russell Westbrook has also exceeded expectations, I think, given, how he had played in Los Angeles on both teams in Los Angeles. But yeah, it's a bit of a worrisome thing though. If Jamal Murray is not that bubble Jamal Murray or that playoff Jamal Murray or whatever you want to call it, then the Nuggets are not winning another title with Jamal Murray. And there's been a lot of fans grumbling about, maybe trying to trade him or something, but he cannot be traded until next offseason, given the contract he just signed. So that is just not even an option on the table. So the Nuggets have to ride with Jamal this season at least, and probably Jokic wouldn't want him gone either, because Jokic is a pretty loyal guy, and they've been, brothers in arms pretty much their whole careers. And I think that might leave a poor taste in Jokic's mouth if they even tried to trade him. So there's some, sensitivity around what to do in the situation. But in the case of Jamal, they just need him to come back. And the best way to do that is to mitigate his minutes, I think, and get him more rest, or at least, not overplay him like they have been doing this season.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you don't want to over task him and, try to supplement him with some of the young guys. And that was another thought I had was, how much will they miss KCP? I actually was on the side of they might be able to get away in the regular season with the players you mentioned with I know I'm going to say his name wrong. Christian Brown. I always
it's confusing. It's brown, like the color brown, but it's spelled like brown. So
yeah,
weird.
Pronunciations are my worst. I will probably call Nikola Jokic or Joker at some point because my brain just doesn't want to work when it comes to pronunciations. But
I struggle with Şengün and Şaric. My brain just doesn't want to make an S sound like an SH. So I hear you.
Yeah, I hear you. It makes sense. And, so there's a couple things to hit on there. Like, I think, like I was saying, I think in the regular season, they should be okay. Like, they still have Jokic playing at an MVP level, probably the best he's ever played. And
it might actually be the best single player start in NBA history ever.
I mean, 32, 13, 10, 2 steals, like averaging a triple-double, shooting line 56, 50, 80, 50% on 4.5 threes a game, 65% true shooting, leads the league in rebounds, leads the league in EPM and offensive EPM. Like, what
second
can't this guy do?
Points, second in assists, I think 7th in steals.
Man,
it's just unreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like he's putting up those like Westbrook triple-double numbers and even more efficiently. And I want to say winning more games, but maybe winning around just as many games as those teams. But, he so far, it's a little bit of a small sample. We're about 20 games in, but he's been on crazy hot start to start the year, like just unparalleled.
But like Jamal Murray, he's playing kind of too many minutes now too. And this isn't really what he wants to do. He would rather facilitate more and score less. But he's just not getting the support from his teammates that would allow him to do that. So he's just like Thanos. fine, I'll do it myself. But that's not what you want from him for the whole regular season, because he'll get burned out by playoff time. And we saw some of that, at the end of that Minnesota series last summer, where the Nuggets, and they were very open about this too. The players were saying, like, in fact, I think KCP said it, like, we ran out of gas.
Yeah.
So, that there's no point in winning a couple more regular season games if you're not going to be at your peak for the playoffs. So they really need to find help at backup center to mitigate some of his minutes, and they're just not getting it from Šarić. He's been a pretty disappointing ad in free agency. And, he kind of just doesn't. Westbrook is doing a pretty good job of running the bench. And a big part of that is he's running with, Julian Strother and Peyton Watson. And these guys get out and run and they cut. And, that allows Westbrook to really kind of push the pace. And Šarić is just kind of lumbering around out there. He just doesn't really fit with that. But then their other options are DeAndre Jordan, who, he's what he is, but he's on the washed side of his career. And then Zeke Naji, who's just never fully realized, some of the potential that was seen in him. And he's, I think, got the worst differential, if I remember, on cleaning the glass of all the Nuggets players, maybe. But yeah, on off differential it is. But but yeah, so Jokic is unreal, and he's, every season we kind of ask, is there anything he could do next season to get better? And it's like, nah, no way. He's already, and then he does it, So
he finds a way.
It's crazy. But they really got to limit the minutes for both him and Murray if they want to have success in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how, that if Murray's not going to be that kind of shooting valve to bring some gravity and scoring when that's what he brings the most, Jokic kind of has to take it upon himself to do it, and then you're running through his minutes, his energy throughout the regular season, and a little bit of burnout. And you have seen a little bit of, like we touched on, MPJ with something of a playmaking leap, and he had a big night just the other night, just cutting against Atlanta. Like, he scored 26 points, 12-17 from the field against the Hawks, and it felt like he was just cutting off ball to the rim over and over again. He at least tied his career high of points in the paint. I'm not sure if he actually said it that night.
I believe it was tied, and I think it was either 19 or 20 of those 26 were in the paint.
Yeah, and just constantly moving off ball, reading Jokic's eyes, getting a lot of cuts off him and off Gordon a little bit too. And of course, Jokic throws in 48 points, 14 boards, 8-3 assists to turnover, and 3 steals just because. And they hit a big blowout there. And to hit on some of the two points that you made. First, the Westbrook point. I think he has surpassed expectations, because he's had kind of a rough go these last couple years as kind of just being moved to the bench, maybe being a little bit erratic as a decision maker, and not necessarily fitting in a ton of places that he's been. And obviously, it takes a lot of maturity for someone of that caliber, stardom, to kind of take the back seat and realize that maybe he is no longer the player he used to be, and accept a new role. And I think Jokic must have seen something, because from what I understand, he wanted Russ to come, and there's an intrigue with the connection between those two because of the explosiveness that Russ still has. And I wanted to see what it would look like running off a handoff from Jokic, because Jokic loves to just keep the ball up high and kind of operate and create looks at the elbow or the, kind of towards the top of the key. And then you have Russ, explosive downhill force coming off of that. And something pointed out by Matt Brooks on Twitter, who covers the Nuggets, was that the two passing pairing has really been, a positive this year, where Russ is willing to make risky passes through small windows, and Jokic has the hands to catch those passes and finish the play. And I just looked it up as we were talking. Russ to Jokic is actually 6th in the league in assist combos. So Russ has assisted Jokic the sixth most times of any two players in the league, and Jamal to Jokic is all the way down to 22nd. And I have to imagine
Yeah,
Jamal is playing a lot
Westbrook is
more.
actually second on the team in assists,
Yeah,
and
and and
Murray's third, and Westbrook has like 10 fewer minutes per game, which
right. I
kind of
mean,
tells you what's happening in that dynamic.
it's wild. And just to kind of pull up a graph, I wrote this super long story on Aaron Gordon. I might reference a few times here with some data viz on him finding a role that championship season. So this is just during the playoffs, but the literally Jokic to those starters on the right side of the graph here shows all the assist combos. The passer is shown, or sorry, the scorer is shown, and then the passer and how many assists they got is right underneath. So Jamal to Jokic was the leading assist combo in that championship run, and then Jokic to all the other starters was 2 through 5, the leader of assist combos through that championship run. And then in the regular season, is on the left side from that year. You can see that Gordon from Jokic, Jokic from Jamal, and down here Jamal from Jokic were all kind of in the top 26 assist combos. So they've all been in the top 25, top 26 type of assist combos during their peak and for years now. So it's interesting to see kind of that fall behind a little bit, and then Russ just walk right in and make up for it in terms of the playmaking. And so I was wondering, what else have you noticed between the Russ and Jokic connection, and how complementary those two have been together?
Yeah, I was really surprised when I first heard that Jokic was asking for the Nuggets to sign Westbrook. Um, that struck me as counterintuitive because it just didn't seem like Russ was a Jokic guy. And that conversely, that Jokic wouldn't see one of his guys in Westbrook, but apparently Joker really loves him, and that has actually manifested itself in their two-man game, which has proven to be quite solid. In the Westbrook has had the chance to start, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5-ish games when Murray has been out, and he's done well as a starter, and he plays really well with Jokic. One thing that they share is the quick outlet pass, and I think, how can the Nuggets be a good fast break team with Jokic on the floor? Because he does run the floor, but he's not the fastest guy in the NBA. But I think having Russ alongside him does help, kind of accelerate the pace. With Jamal, I think he just hasn't had that burst this season. And I think part of the problem with their two-man game, well, two problems. One, I think they've just been at it so long that maybe opposing defenses have had the time and the built up enough knowledge of it to kind of check it defensively a little more now than they were able to, in the bubble, for example, when it was kind of a novel thing at that time. But also, like, one of the main types of assists that Murray delivers to Jokic is out of the pick and roll, and Murray, gets by his defender and he delivers that little bounce pocket pass in the paint to Jokic. And if he's not able to blow by his defender, he's not making that pass. So I think that's one area where Jamal's assists to Jokic have probably dropped off. I haven't checked that out in terms of the passing type data, but I would imagine that probably bears out.
Yeah, and Jokic is still obviously getting his assist numbers. We touched on all the league leading stats. I mean, just an epic season. I think he's he should be number one MVP at this point. It'd be pretty hard to make a case for anyone else at this point. But there obviously are other stars. We'll see if it lasts the whole season. But I mean, just his last 5 games, he just dropped a career high, even in a loss against the Wizards, which is just mind blowing when you really think about all that context. Jokic gives you 56 points, 16 rebounds, 8 assists, and you lose to the Wizards. I mean, what's going on? What's happening there? But
yeah, then the next game he just decides to casually throw up a half court buzzer beater.
Yeah, like it's nothing. And what's
and
crazy,
he switches in.
maybe
what can't he do? In fact,
nothing.
I think the Atlanta. I think it might have been Dominique Wilkins actually who said wow, what can't he do? Literally on the broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, there you
And I think
go.
that's
Like
kind of how everybody feels right now.
he's just been otherworldly, and I'm almost maybe I'm just used to watching him right now. Like the first, it seemed like he wasn't even like I don't know exploding or anything like he normally would. But once he hit that shot, he kind of caught fire and hit a few more threes and all that. But he only had 3 threes in that game, and yet he's so efficient 17 to 29 from the field, 11 from 13 from the line. He finishes with 48, 14, 8, and 3, like we mentioned before. And, we mentioned his averages. He's literally putting up a 30-point triple double a la Russ on the Thunder a few years back. But to me, doing it even more efficiently, hitting shots from any which way. He's been incredible. So, and he's kept the assist numbers up. He's finding Christian Brown ninth in assist combo this year, 13th to Michael Porter Jr. So he's still finding some other teammates with the assist combo, even if the Jamal
And
Jokic
I
connection
believe
hasn't
the
been
Nuggets
there.
are still leading the league in cuts this season.
Okay.
I didn't double check that stat, but
Yeah, and their
I do think
offensive rates.
one aspect of Murray kind of stepping back a little bit is it has opened up more of that cutting game for some other guys like Peyton Watson and Christian Brown, and even Russ. So
Yeah,
I think
and
that
Porter too, even, and
yeah,
they're
he's gotten much
also
better on those back cuts and
yeah, I
things
mean,
like that.
like we mentioned against Atlanta, like he's almost playing. He scored almost 20 points in what felt like just off cuts, and maybe it's a little bit of Atlanta's defense just not paying attention or falling asleep or something because it got kind of blowout ish about halftime or so. They halfway through the third, they were down by 20 or 30. But Learning Basketball is a Swiss Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com. The Nuggets their offense is really highly rated. During that broadcast, I saw that they were up to first in drawing the most free throws per game, but all the way down at 27th in actually free throw percentage and converting the free throws. So, just kind of
It's
you creating good
it's
looks, but
been
you can't hit
maddening,
the easy shot.
actually.
Yeah,
Like,
I
why
mean,
can't they make their free throws is one of the mysteries of this Nuggets season for sure.
yeah, you want them. You're creating a good look. Everyone should be able to hit a certain level of free throws, and it is kind of odd that hasn't turned out the way it is. And
It's
what's
almost like contagious somehow, it seems.
yeah,
Like one guy
we
misses one, another guy misses one, and it just kind of keeps spreading around.
yeah, Coach Malone's going to have like an all free throw shooting practice here soon. Like we're not doing anything else until everyone hits 100 free throws, and then you can go home. Like, I don't know what
It
else you
might be
can
happening
do.
as we speak.
Yeah, I mean we'll
Wouldn't
have
be
to
surprised.
check in. And to hit on some of the Nuggets rates, I mean their offense is actually really highly rated in every category. Like, and
Yeah,
from what
in offense right now, but something like 15th in defense.
yeah, that's what I was looking at cleaning the glass, so it might be
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too
there you go.
earlier.
So yeah, 15th in defense. They're only fouling. They're the fifth best team at fouling. So or at not fouling on defense. That's kind of their best rate, and then fairly relatively league average. 14th at shooting percentage and 16th at turnover percentage on defense. And then the offense is all top 12 or better. They're 12th in point differential overall, which means they're beating teams by the 12th highest amount of points per game. They're sixth in offense, ninth in shooting percentage, 11th in turnover percentage, 11th in rebounding, and fourth at drawing fouls, like we mentioned. But that's probably slightly different than just the ranking first in the total number of fouls per game that they're able to draw. So, like, the trend, the fun fact I always like to throw out there is like championship teams are top 12 on both ends. They have been every year except for going back to the Shaq and Kobe Lakers teams, and they have that mark for the offense. The defense is kind of close enough. You would like it to kind of trickle up just a little bit to about top 10 or top 12 or so, but they're getting by with league average, and they're just above average or elite top 10 at every aspect of offensive basketball, and they have an MVP doing it. You would think this is close to a recipe to success for a champion, and yet they just feel off this year, and we're not exactly sure why, but we've hit on some of the reasons. And is there anything else that kind of stands out to you about this season. Maybe Peyton Watson's defense gets. We haven't talked a ton about him, but he's been a nice role player for them, able to bring a lot of deflections, defensive instincts. Christian Brown has stepped up a little bit into a bigger role where he was kind of, like you mentioned, off the bench last year. Now he's starting, so maybe you lose a little bit of that depth. And then I was gonna kind of ask like why they don't play Aaron Gordon at backup center like the playoff run. I made this graph during the championship season where it almost was like uh, Coach Malone was waiting for the playoffs to bust it out because
And
with Gordon.
that's true. I would agree with that interpretation.
Yeah, so maybe that is the case again, but they have to get by in they have to make the playoffs to use it in the playoffs, and like with Gordon on and there it is, Jokic off, they were not, or they were in the regular season they were minus 7.7 with Gordon on and Jokic off. In the playoffs, they were plus 7.4 with Jokic on and Gordon off. They were plus 6 in the regular season, minus 2 in the playoffs. With both of them off the floor, they had a minus 16 net rating in 700 minutes in the regular season. And then with both of them on the floor, they were 14, plus 14 in 1,700 minutes in the regular season and plus 14 in 400 minutes in the playoffs. And you can see here in the third column, they never had a moment with both of them off the floor in the playoffs. And maybe that's shortening the rotation. Maybe that's kind of like keeping an ace up your sleeve. We're going to use our best lineups, our best option for backup center when we have to, not to expend too much energy on AG, who's something of a defensive anchor for this team. He especially was in that playoff run. I visualized some of his matchups from that playoff run where like he was able to really slow down Karl Anthony Towns and Kevin Durant. And that was kind of his best matchup where he would he's strong and agile. He would get up under these tall, slimmer shooters and give them trouble during the playoff run. 37% for Cat, 38% for KD, and kind of keep, other guys in check like Anthony Edwards and Jimmy Butler at 48% on 21 shots when he was matched up with them. And, some other guys shot pretty well on a smaller volume, but to me, he was the guy that just made, like I thought Aaron Gordon was the most versatile defender during that title run. We don't have to play the whole video, but I
would agree.
Made some videos of kind of everything he did and his playoff run and every play from that. So what does Aaron Gordon mean to this team going back to that title run, and then just nowadays is he still showing everything that you expect from him this year?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I would just say that I would say you are correct in all of your, assessment of why Malone was kind of saving him for the playoffs and didn't play him as backup center much in the regular season. One was an ace in the sleeve kind of thing where that allowed Denver to throw some different looks that, teams hadn't seen very much up to that point. But also, the biggest factor I think is just preserving his body. Like they just don't want Gordon to get beat up too much through the course of the regular season. And he actually has played backup center more this season than he has in previous seasons, kind of out of necessity almost because of the failures of the aforementioned failures of the other backup centers. But, when it comes to playoff time, he is the backup center pretty much. And that's what I would expect to see. But, I do think he is, Jokic is the defensive anchor in the sense that he's the center and he's also kind of the coach of the defense. You can often see him pointing guys like, go stand over there. He's directing the show in a sense, but I would agree that AG is probably, in terms of, locking it down, he's the guy. And hopefully Christian Brown can, he's not the same type of defender as KCP, but, he is a very solid defender. And hopefully he can be kind of the co-pilot with AG of, between the three more offensive oriented players in Jamal and MPJ and Jokic, they can kind of fill those gaps defensively. And, like you said, Peyton Watson as well is he's probably the Nuggets' best defensive playmaker. Um, he still has a ways to go in terms of, kind of off-ball defense and understanding where to go and things like that. But he leads the Nuggets in blocks, I believe. So yeah, but with Gordon, I do think especially he just missed about a month with that hamstring injury, and I think they just don't want him to take the abuse that he would go through if he's playing center. But also he's only been back, kind of recently, so he hasn't really made as big of an impact since coming back as we've seen from him in the past. But I imagine once he gets his conditioning back up and gets back into the groove, that he will be fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Peyton Watson definitely has some defensive instincts, and like he had a nice big block against the Hawks that led to Christian Brown Euro step transition. And like any team, they want to force turnovers. They want to get out on the break, and they are top 12. They're 11th at doing just that. So that every team wants those easy buckets, the easy transition opportunities, and can pride themselves off that defense. And yeah, with AG, definitely want to see him kind of get his conditioning back. So see him I saw him like leak out a few times. Like he has that chemistry of knowing like someone's going to look for me on the outlet. I just got to run the floor, get the ball up on the rim, and draw a foul because if someone's going to foul me because I'm too strong of a play finisher not to do that. So he has a little bit of that going. He had a nice little chemistry moment with Westbrook. It looked like where they were running a baseline out of bounds set, and Jordan was like doing like a play out of the longest yard where he was like pretending to call a different play or something, and then he just like got snapped the ball real quick under the rim and finished it for the and one and did a little like handshake.
Yeah, that was within the last
Russ.
3 games, right? I remember the play you're talking about.
Yeah, I want to say it was also against the Hawks game.
Yeah, that could be because that's pretty fresh in my memory banks right now. But yeah, I was actually, when you started talking about him leaking out, traditionally it's been Jokic delivering probably 95% of those passes to him. But I think there is some promise with a playoff bench lineup that features him as backup center and Russell Westbrook running that unit, that they could get a lot of that action too. And Russ is really great at those outlets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the shooting is a question, I guess, for the bench, and obviously the depth itself. But I think there are some promising signs. Like even with Brown in the starting unit now, you got Russ, you got Peyton Watson, maybe AG becomes that backup center. You still have Strother, and I guess that for me, the KCP trade, like I mentioned before, like that might become more evident in the playoffs, like where you're relying on KCP to lock down opposing star guards for an entire playoff series, and you kind of know what you're going to get. And he brings a little bit of scoring versatility, especially that chemistry off of Jokic, running handoffs and pick and rolls, just as a kind of a secondary option. And obviously, the catch and shoot 3-point shot was reliable there too. So it just fit really cleanly with what they already did. So that's where I think we might notice the biggest difference. But maybe that difference, like you mentioned, will be on the bench itself. So do you think that they are prime for a trade candidate team? Are they going to be able to find another 8th or 9th man to kind of fill out this rotation? It was a little surprising. They used their MLE on Saric when he didn't necessarily show a ton with Golden State last season. And I know he's, brings some skill to the front court, but hasn't really been a huge impact guy very, very much lately in his career. So do you think there's any hope that they can bring in a little bit of help here to supplement this playoff run?
Well, they are pretty well hamstrung by the new CBA and being over the first apron. In any trade, as I'm sure you know, they cannot send out more money than they take back in. And so basically they can't trade with, and especially if they trade with they can't trade with another first apron team unless they exactly match the dollar amount, which is basically impossible. So that kind of cuts off about a third of the league right there for trade options. But, I think they're definitely going to try to make some kind of moves, but, people are talking about trading Michael Porter for Zach LaVine. I just don't see that big of a move happening. I think under the constraints that they're working in, it would just be extraordinarily difficult. And a big part of that problem is just like the rest of the league doesn't value their assets as much as they do. You know, what NBA team out there really wants Julian Strawther?
Right.
And he's shown, he's played well this season, and he is kind of the, offensive focal point of that second unit. He's the guy who can make threes, and he can do some, kind of driving floater type action and stuff like that. But don't have too many other creators on that second unit. But yeah, the Saric thing, I think they were I think conceptually, I get it. I think they were trying to look for kind of Jokic light who could continue the same style of play as Jokic when he goes to the bench, roughly speaking, not at the same level, obviously, but it just hasn't panned out. So I think definitely we will see them at least make some kind of moves around the margins. Who that becomes, I'm not sure, but their options are going to be quite limited, and they're going to have to take what they can get, really. Right. And their roster is full too. So when it comes to the waiver pickups, they would have to waive a player in order to get someone off the waiver wire. So that is another complication. And they're pretty close to that second apron. I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but I think they're within like 2 or 3 million of that second apron. So they really have extraordinarily little wiggle room there. Assuming that they're not willing to go over the second apron, which I think is a safe assumption since they let KCP go. So,
yeah, that's fair. I mean, they've definitely had some questionable moves as of late, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but where's Mason Plumlee when you need him? The old backup center that just fit so perfectly for some reason right off the bench for that unit, able to, like you mentioned, kind of not recreate Jokic, but just run the offense the same style, the same way, and kind of help the second unit like get up and down the floor. And I think I found him on the state of his here in the middle. This is, I forgot to mention during when we were talking about Gordon and kind of his outlets and stuff, he was right up there in dunks and putbacks, and that was just showed his play finisher role, where 29% or 30% of his shot attempts came at the rim, either on dunks or putbacks, and he was right up there in efficiency and volume with just about anybody in the entire league. And I mean, Giannis, for example, is doing it on the ball, bring the ball up himself, and that was only 18% of his shot attempts. But like a Rudy Gobert, who's also doing it off the ball, is roughly 37.6 of his attempts, but a much smaller efficiency. And you can kind of just see, Gordon's incredible play finishing in that sense. So just wanted to shout that out as well. And one last note, just because Jokic's shot making was on another level and always has been. I mean, that playoff run was special. It was super cool to see them get over the hump after kind of like making the playoffs multiple years in a row and getting close. And I mean, some of these shots are just insane. I mean, this is one of my favorites. I mean, the slow mo over his head, step back fade over AD. It felt like he had,
and AD shaking his head and laughing afterwards because he's just like, "What can I do about this guy? There's nothing I can do."
Yeah, and he did it again, and I think this is the one. Maybe I thought
was that second one the one? I thought that first one was, but
I think there's a
it was from the top
here,
of the arc for sure.
right here, where he's just like looks, gives him a smile, like what the heck can I do here, man? There's nothing. But he's an incredible talent. That was an all-time playoff run. I tracked every play that Gordon made, winning play wise, and wrote this like. I actually got to talk to his high school coach that he kind of credits for some of his defense as well. And yeah, I mean, it was super incredible playoff run for Jokic, for Gordon, for Jamal, and this ad guy, I guess, wants to hop in here. So that's a good sign to close off the video there. But man, just a incredible run. We hope they get back to that.
By the way, were you already kind of covering the Magic when Gordon was on the team?
Oh yeah, so that extensive kind of article that I wrote was about his development and finding kind of finally finding his perfect role. I compared him to Sean Marion playing with Steve Nash, where like his strengths are just maximized off this scoring creator orbit of Jokic, where he's able to focus on the basic things that he does so well and actually showcase them on the national stage as a defensive ace, big wing defender, a little bit of a post up scoring creator hub where he can efficiently score and create for others as that backup center. And then obviously play finishing, running, kind of making that 2-man game a 3-man game with Jamal and Jokic, where they run the pick and roll, and then AG's waiting in the dunker spot, and now you got to stop Jokic's floater or the lob to AG as he's waiting. If you help off of him, so it's just one more really tough way to stop that play, and it's just not as unstoppable if Jamal isn't able to create those advantages and hit those tough shots. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it's still just a stellar fit, I feel like. And add
Were,
in,
were you were you
yeah.
surprised at all? Because I have to confess to not being the closest follower of the Orlando Magic. Um, they're an East
What?
team, and I'm covering the Nuggets, so I tend to watch the West more than the East. But during the time when AG was on the Magic, it seemed like they were basically marketing him as the face of the franchise and the number one guy for the team and stuff like that. And it kind of, externally seemed like he kind of wanted to be that guy. And so you probably know in better detail because you covered that team. But were you surprised at all, like at how kind of easily he transitioned into kind of a tertiary role with the Nuggets and how smooth that transition went? Because, like, if you remember that first stretch of, I believe it was 7 games or so, I think after the trade, he, before Jamal Murray got injured shortly thereafter, but I think they won like 7 out of the first 8 games that AG played with the Nuggets until Murray got hurt. But it was a perfectly smooth transition, which he was playing a fairly dramatically different role than he was in Orlando. And were you surprised at all by that?
So first of all, with the Nuggets, yeah, I mean, I remember how he showed perfect chemistry right away, and it was almost like a what if. There was like 2 weeks where they looked like they had figured out basketball, and then one guy got hurt. You mentioned Jamal, and then I think Porter got hurt after that, and it almost like it took a year or two for all of them to finally get back and healthy. And that championship run year was the season they were all healthy, and they added KCP for that perfect fifth piece to kind of slide right in, and it
And
was
Bruce
almost,
Brown.
yeah, there you go. And Bruce Brown, the short rolling like role player, just really nice fit. They had Jeff Green as kind of a nice third forward that brought a little two-way versatility to placate one of MPJ or AG when they went to the bench, and just have another guy with that length, that shooting that could be thrown out there and relied upon. I mean, Jeff Green cashed in for a nice 1-year, $15 million deal off that run in the next summer. So,
Jokic makes guys money, man.
yeah,
Like, anyone who gets the chance to play with him, they look their best, and then they get a good deal with another team, and then that team ends up feeling disappointed in them. But it's like, you have to kind of factor in the Jokic factor if you're going to assess Nuggets talent, because he just elevates everyone else's game so much.
Yeah, I mean I feel like that gets lost sometimes, and maybe I don't know if you would think teams are considering this, but maybe fans as well. Just not everyone is their box score production, and that there's a lot of situation, opportunity, who you're playing with, what shots you're getting, what number of touches on the ball, off the ball that are affecting those numbers. That is not just about like pure talent. I'm going to take those numbers and drop them into this system and see the exact same thing. That's not always the case, especially when you're playing off of Jokic, who, similar to like I compared to Steve Nash, like just kind of boosts everyone's numbers because everyone's getting good looks, efficient shots, and much more open type of things that fit their style of play. And back to AG on the Magic, yeah, I would say that by the end of it, I think he was most ready to win. He made very clear like he wanted to be a part of a winning team, and he actually asked out for just that opportunity. So I think there was more of a buy-in ready to be had for him, where he was ready to, like, I don't think he could have dreamed up a better basketball situation for just that, even with all the injuries up front for everyone else. Like getting to play off of Jokic is a match made in heaven for what he brings to the table. And he was a little bit of overtasked and maybe misused at times in Orlando. Like there were times where they'd almost build him as the next Paul George. I mean, going back to the Oladipo trade, what I would call the worst trade in the history of the team, give up arguably the best prospect on the team, number 2 pick, goes on to be all defense, all NBA 2 years later for half a season of Serge Ibaka, because you want to see if Serge can be like an all-star if given more touches next to Vucevic. And it just felt like a mess from the beginning. And part of that thinking is, well, Aaron Gordon's going to be our Paul George on the wing, and he's going to be the star on-ball creator. And him creating from scratch on the wing is just not his strong suit. Like he's great at many things, but that's not one of them.
He's a really good passer, but his best passes tend to happen kind of as like the third or fourth pass on a possession, like within the flow of something that Jokic initiated.
For sure. And especially even in the post, like he showcased post-up efficiency back then, where there was a pretty long sample size of him being more efficient scoring and creating for the team out of the post than Vucevic himself in the post. And that was based on just points per possession, and they both had a good volume to base that off of. So, it turned into, like, in terms of the trades itself, like the Vucevic trade was such a good trade for Orlando that it kind of worked out that the Magic didn't really get a ton back for Aaron Gordon and his value, what I perceived it to be around the league. But maybe that was just where it was at that time. But it ended up being RJ Hampton, former first-round pick, who's no longer with the team. Gary Harris, who's been solid. Like he's probably been as good as Orlando could have asked for, because he's been a reliable veteran defensive guard, catch and shoot 3-point guy. And obviously he was much more than that early on with the Nuggets. Super exciting young core with him, Jamal and Jokic, like years ago. He was kind of the next big guard coming up for them. But so he
was one of the guys alongside Will Barton who kind of unlocked Jokic in a way, who really knew how to cut and really knew how to kind of make the most opportunistic reads on Jokic passing and really kind of facilitate Jokic becoming more Jokic. So that was a painful trade for Nuggets fans when it first happened, because everybody loved Gary Harris, and but probably the best trade in Nuggets history, because it ultimately resulted in their only championship. They couldn't have won that title without AG.
Right, no doubt. When you look at it like that, I mean, absolutely, and it's tough for any fan base losing a fan favorite like that, even when it works out. I mean, I'm sure like Boston probably feels similarly about the Marcus Smart trade, but you end up, winning a chip off of Kristaps and Drew Holiday coming in to replace him. So that's kind of the game we play, and I would hate for the Magic to do something similar with maybe Jalen Suggs down the line, where they trade him and he's a fan favorite. So I don't want to see that, but you got to understand this is a business at the same time. And if they think they're going to improve the team's chances, that's kind of how it goes. But it is definitely more, maybe not more rewarding.
And you have to know when to cut the cord too. Like the Nuggets have done a fairly good job, letting Will Barton go at the right time. He really fell off after they, got rid of him. Gary Harris, you kind of see the same pattern there. KCP and Bruce Brown, I think neither of them have probably performed up to the expectations that the teams that acquired them were hoping for. I don't think the Rockets really expected that much from Jeff Green other than to be a veteran leader. So I don't think that applies there. But you have to make those painful cuts sometimes in order to, just keep the inflow of new talent fresh. And also you asked what was wrong with the Nuggets more or less early on in our conversation, and I think part of their issue this season seems to just kind of be a malaise that has set in. I think things feel kind of stale. That's part of that whole Jokic Murray 2-man game thing. Like they were so reliant on that one action for so long, and I think they just need to diversify things. Michael Porter has really helped in that respect by you know, basically being the second best player on the team this season. I I think that's pretty clear at this point. I think he's the second leading scorer, and he's been probably the most consistent player outside of Jokic. So I think it's a painful thing to lose some guys you love, but cutting them at the right time is really critical to good team building. So that's one
Absolutely.
area where the Nuggets have done better than I think they might get credit for. They got roasted for letting KCP go, but like I said, that has clearly a negative consequence for the Nuggets bench. But if they had paid him that much money and they went into the second apron, they would be 100% locked in with that, and they would not have been able to make any trades and they would have had zero flexibility. So I think it's at least there's a logical justification that you can make that was a prudent move in a certain respect. But
Yeah, especially if you like believe that someone in the bench like Christian Brown can kind of replace some of what you're losing, and that flexibility is invaluable. And the I would say the fans probably don't care as much about it in the moment, but in terms of actually building a winning team, like you have to try to keep your roster as flexible as possible for moves to down the line. And things happen fast in the NBA where people age quickly, lose a step, they lose that impact. And if you're just maxing out your roster on one roster, it might be a clean rotation today. But if you're set like that for 3 years, I mean, anything can happen in a couple seasons where you don't have the advantages that you used to. So it definitely makes sense that why they would do it. And you hate to lose KCP in that perfect floor balance, but that's kind of the breaks of the game sometimes as well. But you know, I really appreciate you hopping on the pod today, Joel. It was a lot of fun talking Nuggets hoops and breaking into the game. Is there anything you want to plug or any recent pieces like that?
um, well, we already talked about my Michael Porter Jr. film study piece, and I'll be dropping one soon on the Nuggets 3-point shooting problem and their math problem there.
Yeah.
Because they take the fewest in the league in terms of 3-point attempts, and that's just not going to cut it for title contention. So, yeah, and then Blue Sky, Twitter, or X or Twix or whatever we're calling it these days, but at Joel Rush NBA, both places.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah, I enjoyed talking with you, man. It was fun.
Yeah, this was a lot
Thanks
of fun.
for having me on.
Always enjoyed talking hoops, and the Nuggets have been, one of my favorite teams to watch the last few years. Jokic is just a nuclear talent, and it's fun rooting for AG, seeing his success finally get over the hump and find his perfect role, and Porter's development.
Can I ask you one
Yeah.
last question before we sign off here?
Of course.
Because actually the Magic have been one of my favorite, adopted favorite teams with the ascension of Franz and Paolo. But if, gun to your head, you had to choose either Franz or Paolo to keep and you had to let one go.
Oh, wow.
For the next 10 years of the Magic. Like,
how could you do this to me?
I'm sorry. But I mean, just like Franz has just changed that conversation so much, right? This season.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have said anything except for Paolo last season, right?
Right.
But now it's like, ooh, maybe Wagner is a serious consideration.
Really making me choose a family member here is what it feels like. But I've kind of always been a Paolo guy. I just love the aesthetics of the way he plays, and Carmelo Anthony was one of my favorite players growing up. So
he's definitely got some mellow in him for sure, and I do think his ceiling is higher.
Yeah, that's probably where I would end up.
It seems like in the playoffs, he's a guy who could really take a team to a higher level. And I'm loving Franz this season, but I'm just not sure if he has that extra level.
Yeah, we got to give a shout to Franz. I mean, Franz has been at I don't even maybe even MVP caliber this in terms of small sample size, but he's certainly been the Magic's most valuable player. He's putting up all-star, all NBA level numbers. It's a shame he just got hurt. He's playing as well on either end of the floor. His defense almost doesn't get talked about as enough as well. Like check out any impact stat, and he's going to be highly rated on defense and steals as well that you might not necessarily think of. And there's a chance he could be one of the rising two-way wings in this league for a very long time. And he's got his 3-point shot back. He's hitting his step backs. It looks like that last year was the odd year out of the sample size for the 3-point variance, and that he was kind of a career 35%, and now he's even higher this year. So, and he's taking tougher shots than ever on the ball. So like he's been a one-man offense for Orlando, running pick and rolls, drawing fouls, scoring at the rim, hitting threes, looking for teammates, painting sprays, and he's been as reliable as they come. So you can't go wrong with either answer here. For the sake of the question, I'll go with Paolo. That he's my guy still. The aesthetics of watching him play are super fun. That mellow.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to do that to you.
Yeah, it's really sore through the heart.
The good news is that they don't have to decide, right?
Yeah, thankfully
they can keep them
we
both
don't
around.
have to yet. I'll still, yeah, we don't have to address it quite yet. So that's nice. But it was definitely a lot of fun talking Nuggets hoops, and hope you enjoy the rest of the season covering the team, and good luck to them. We want to see them kind of bounce back, figure out some of these issues, and make a real run at it. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it too.
Have a good one.
See you around on on the socials.
You already know. I'll cut it off there, and I'll be sure to I'll probably post on Twitter. I'm not the best at posting on Blue Sky, but I will tag you if I do. I'm still making that transition myself over to Blue Sky. But
yeah, I'm double posting everything right now, and it's not a tenable situation for the rest of the season. Like I'm going to be pretty much moving over to Blue Sky, except for only posting like article links and stuff, I think, on Twitter.
It makes sense. And everything's got to be slightly different for both sites. It's like this video can be this long and this quality, and the other site's like half as much.
That's the most frustrating thing is the video limitations on Blue Sky right now for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just I've had to like resize so many videos.
It's a bit much, bit much of the editing to have to do that. But
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking hoops. Down to make it happen again anytime. Always down to talk hoops, and
let me know. I'll be happy to hop on anytime.
You know it. Well, enjoy the rest of the season, and good luck with
it. You too. I'm looking forward to seeing Franz and Paolo and Suggs all back together again and see what that looks like.
Oh yeah, can't wait. We got 5 games of it. Should be, I guess, a month from now. Hopefully, about halfway through January. It looks like should be rolling. So hopefully, We're still right up there, third in the standings at the moment. And I think. See, the other thing is that Orlando had a really easy schedule during that Franz stretch, and now they're about to play 6 teams above 500. But it's also at home, so it's kind of like they're bad against good teams, but they're 10-0 at home. They haven't lost a game at home since like April of last season, and so
we get to find out a little bit about who they really are, then, huh?
Yeah, even without Franz, exactly. It's like a real test coming up with as soon as Paolo gets back. Anyway, that's when we can start kind of judging them a little more. But it's fun, and I'll be at the Heat game in about a week doing the credential thing again, so that'll be exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Enjoy Miami.
Yeah,
no, I guess you're staying in Orlando though. That's a home game, you said, right?
Yeah. I do the.
Well, how long does it take to drive from Orlando to Miami?
About 4 hours, I believe, depending on which part of Miami. But yeah, about.
Will you try to catch
4 hours.
Any of those if they have a road game out there?
If I can, I'll probably catch the Heat when they're in town. But if I can figure out, I normally, if I'm traveling, might do like a grassroots event for high school scouting and try to NBA draft scouting type of future looking stuff, type of reports. But yeah, if probably catch the Heat in town here. We'll see. I could always go down for a game, and you can't go wrong. I've never actually seen a game in Miami, so it could be a fun idea.
Yeah, I've never been to Miami or Orlando for that matter, but
Yeah.
seems like that might be, a fun one night road trip
Yeah, no doubt.
if
You
you
have
could.
to keep it in mind.
All right.
Make it
Well,
happen.
thanks, man. It's actually getting a little bit late here now, so I should probably let you go. But thanks for having me, and we'll see you around.
You know it. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Later.